The Steffi Graf Stadium in Berlin. June 18, 2026. The grass is still warm from the afternoon sun. The crowd is on its feet. And a 21-year-old from Kazakh city has just done something that no one saw coming. She has beaten Elena Rybakina, the world number 2. The Wimbledon champion. The player who had 13 aces, who won 81% of her first serves, who had dismantled Eala just weeks earlier in Rome. The scoreline read 7-5, 6-4. Straight sets, but it wasn't the victory that left the tennis world speechless. It was what happened next. Alexandra Eala, the Filipina sensation, who had just pulled off the biggest win of her grass-court career, did something that no one expected. She pulled out her phone. She made a call. And in that moment, the world saw something it had never seen before: raw, unfiltered emotion. "I called my dad," she said, her voice trembling with joy. "I just said, oh my God. We were just screaming, and my mom was there, too. I'm just really happy." The tennis world was stunned. Not by the victory, but by the vulnerability. The humanity. The reminder that behind the rankings, behind the headlines, behind the hype, there is a young woman who is still processing the magnitude of what she has achieved. "I am a little foggy right now," Eala admitted. "I'm still shaking, and I was shaking on match point, too." The words hung in the air like a confession. A window into the soul of a champion who had just done the unthinkable. And the WTA, the fans, the entire tennis world, was left absolutely speechless. This is the story of that moment. This is the story of how a young woman from the Philippines, in the span of a single post-match interview, reminded us all what it truly means to be human. Let's begin. The Berlin Tennis Open. A WTA 500 event. One of the premier grass court tournaments of the season. The draw was stacked with the world's best, all of them fine-tuning their games before Wimbledon. And in the midst of it all was Alexandra Eala, a wild-card entrant who had no business being there. Or so the critics said. Eala had arrived in Berlin ranked 35th in the world. She had started the year ranked 33rd, slipped to 37th, and then clawed her way back up. She had won her second WTA 125 title at Birmingham just days earlier. A hard-fought victory that had proven her breakthrough at Miami was no fluke. She was playing with a confidence that had been forged through months of victories, through beating Grand Slam champions, through proving to the world that she belonged. But Berlin was different. Berlin was a step up. A WTA 500 event with a draw that included the best players in the world. And Eala's path to the quarterfinals was anything but easy. Her first opponent was Donna Vekic. The Croatian veteran had just won the biggest title of her career at Queen's Club, defeating former US Open champion Emma Raducanu in the final. She was confident. She was hungry. And she was looking for revenge. Eala won 7-5, 6-4, recovering from 0-40 in the final game to seal the victory. "Donna is an incredible player, and she's been showcasing it a lot lately," Eala said after the match. But the victory over Vekic was just the beginning. Waiting for Eala in the round of 16 was a player who had beaten her just weeks earlier in Rome. A player who was supposed to end her fairy tale. A player who would prove to be her toughest challenge yet, Elena Rybakina. The world number 2. The Wimbledon champion. The match began with a roar from the crowd. The Steffi Graf Stadium, usually a neutral venue, had transformed into a sea of Filipino flags. The support for Eala was deafening. It was the kind of atmosphere that rattles opponents, that makes them question their own abilities, that forces them to confront the reality that they are no longer playing against just one player, but against an entire nation. Rybakina, to her credit, did not crumble under the noise. She had played in front of hostile crowds before. She had won Grand Slams. She had beaten the best players in the world. She was not going to be intimidated by a few flags and some loud cheers, and she proved it early. Rybakina came out firing. Her serves were thundering. Her ground strokes were devastating. She raced to a 4-1 lead, leaving Eala scrambling. The Kazakh had 13 aces in the match, a testament to her power and precision. It looked like the script was following the same plot as Rome, but Eala refused to back down. I think you have to give yourself grace, while also being brave, when facing a heavy server, Eala would later say. And I think for me, returning and my game in general, a highlight word would be to be brave. And it makes a big difference when I'm able to do that, and that's exactly what she did. She absorbed Rybakina's power and returned it with interest. She started dictating points. She started moving forward, taking the ball early, putting pressure on the Wimbledon champion. The momentum shifted. Eala found her footing and took 6 of the next 7 games to win the first set 7-5. The crowd erupted. The Filipino flags waved. And Eala had sent a clear message to the world number 2. This was not going to be a repeat of Rome. The second set was similarly tight. Rybakina continued to fight, but Eala's composure was unshakable. She converted 3 of her 7 break-point opportunities. She won 70.4% of points on Rybakina's second serve. She was clinical. She was ruthless. She was unstoppable. The final point came on a sharp cross-court forehand that Rybakina misfired wide. Eala had done it. She had stunned the world number 2. The scoreline read 7-5, 6-4. The match had taken 1 hour and 32 minutes. And Eala had just achieved the biggest victory of her grass court career. The cameras were rolling. The microphones were live. And Alexandra Eala, still processing what she had just accomplished, walked over to the on-court interviewer. Andrea Petkovic, the former player turned broadcaster, was waiting, but before Eala could speak, she did something that no one expected. She pulled out her phone. She made a call. And in that moment, the world saw something it had never seen before. I called my dad, the beaming 21-year-old said. I just said, oh my God. We were just screaming, and my mom was there, too. I'm just really happy. The words were simple. But the emotion behind them was profound. Here was a young woman, who had just beaten the second-best player in the world, and her first instinct was to call her parents. To share the moment with the people who had believed in her from the very beginning. The people who had sacrificed everything so she could chase her dream. The tennis world was stunned. Not by the victory, but by the vulnerability. The humanity. The reminder that behind the rankings, behind the headlines, behind the hype, there is a young woman who is still processing the magnitude of what she has achieved. I am a little foggy right now, Eala admitted. I'm still shaking, and I was shaking on match point, too. But I'm really happy with today, of course. It could have gone either way. The words hung in the air. Here was a champion who had just beaten the world number 2, and she was admitting that she was shaking. She was admitting that she couldn't quite believe what she had done. She was showing the kind of vulnerability that is rare in professional sports, and in that moment, the tennis world fell in love with her all over again. She's the one to beat, Eala said of Rybakina, so I'm happy to have been able to share the court with her again. The contrast could not have been more stark. Here was a young woman who had just achieved the impossible, and she was deflecting credit. She was acknowledging that the match could have gone either way. She was showing the kind of grace that champions are made of. The phone call was just the beginning. What came next would leave the tennis world even more stunned. Andrea Petkovic asked Eala about the match. About the comeback. About what it took to beat one of the best players in the world on her preferred surface. And Eala's response was nothing short of remarkable. I think you have to give yourself grace, while also being brave, when facing a heavy server, she said. And I think for me, returning and my game in general, a highlight word would be to be brave. And it makes a big difference when I'm able to do that, grace. Bravery. 2 words that captured everything about Alexandra Eala's journey. Grace in the face of adversity. bravery in the face of fear, and the wisdom to know that both are needed to achieve greatness. But it was what she said next that truly stunned the WTA. "She's the one to beat," Eala said of Rybakina. "So I'm happy to have been able to share the court with her again." The words hung in the air. She is the one to beat. Eala had just beaten the world number 2. She had just pulled off one of the biggest upsets of the year. And yet, she was praising her opponent. She was acknowledging Rybakina's greatness. She was showing the kind of humility that is rare in professional sports. "She's an amazing player," Eala continued. "I think there were really tight moments in both sets." The tennis world was left speechless. Not just by the victory, but by the way Eala carried herself in the aftermath. She had shown that she was not just a great tennis player. She was a great human being. "I'm a little foggy right now," she had said. And in that fog, in that moment of raw emotion, she had revealed something profound about herself. She was still the same young girl who had left her family at the age of 12 to chase a dream. She was still the same young girl who had been written off, overlooked, and doubted at every turn. She was still the same young girl who refused to give up. And in that moment, the tennis world realized something. Alexandra Eala was not just the future of tennis. She was the present. And she was here to stay. The victory over Elena Rybakina was not just a win. It was a statement. A declaration that Alexandra Eala was ready for the biggest stage of them all. The implications of the victory were immediate. Eala's record in matches against top 10 players improved to 5 career wins overall. She had now beaten 2 different world number 2 players in her career. Iga Swiatek at the 2025 Miami Open and now Elena Rybakina in Berlin. The victory also had significant implications for her ranking. Eala climbed to number 30 in the live WTA rankings, just 1 place below her career-high ranking position of 29th. She earned 195 ranking points and €57,395, around P3.9 million, in prize money, for her semifinal finish. But the victory was about more than rankings and statistics. It was about belief. It was about validation. It was about showing the world that Alexandra Eala was not a flash in the pan. She was a star. And she was only getting started. Eala's run in Berlin continued after the Rybakina victory. She went on to defeat world number 8 Elena Svitolina in the quarterfinals, 6-3, 6-4. She reached the semifinals of a WTA 500 event for the first time in her career. She became the first Filipino to achieve such a feat. "Elena is a huge fighter, and I've seen it many times," Eala said in her on-court interview after the match. "I've been watching her since I was a kid, so to be able to compete with her today is such an honor, and I really admire her. She's a mother, and I find her to act with such elegance and strength." And when her run finally came to an end at the hands of Linda Noskova in the semifinals, Eala did not hang her head. She expressed her gratitude on social media, writing, "Can't begin to describe all the emotions I've experienced this week. My heart is full. I am forever grateful. Berlin, you are so special, thank you." The moment that left fans speechless was not just the victory. It was the journey. It was the vulnerability. It was the humanity. It was a young woman who, in the span of a single post-match interview, reminded us all what it truly means to be a champion. She had shown the world that greatness is not about arrogance. It is about grace. It is about bravery. It is about refusing to give up, even when the odds are stacked against you. And it is about remembering where you came from, even when you have reached the top. And that, my friends, is how a 21-year-old from Quezon City walked onto the grass of Berlin and left the entire tennis world absolutely speechless. She beat the world number 2. She called her dad. She screamed with joy. She showed us what it truly means to be human. This is the rise of Alexandra Eala. This is history in the making. And trust me, This is only the beginning.